I'm Olivia, and I'm 12 years old. My mother just told me I'm interfering with their marriage while packing my entire life into 2 suitcases. Every book, every piece of clothing, every childhood memory, all crammed together like I'm being erased from this house forever. Sweetheart, it's just temporary, she says without looking at me, folding my favorite dress with the same care she'd give dirty laundry. But I can see the relief in her eyes, the way her shoulders relax as each item disappears into the bag. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt completely disposable to the people who were supposed to love you most. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. Let me take you back to how we got here, because trust me, this didn't happen overnight. My parents are what you'd generously call artists. Dad plays guitar in a band that's been on the verge of making it big for about 8 years now, and Mom fancies herself an actress, though the only roles she's landed are community theater productions and a commercial for a local mattress store that aired exactly 3 times. They're always practicing, always creating, always needing absolute silence for their art, which means I spend most of my time in my bedroom with the door closed, surrounded by textbooks and homework assignments. Not that I'm complaining. Books have become my best friends. While other kids are watching TV with their families, I'm diving into mathematical equations and historical timelines. Anything that makes sense when everything else in my life feels chaotic. Olivia, honey, we need quiet time for rehearsal. Mom calls from downstairs, the same phrase I've heard every day after school for the past 3 years. Dad's band is practicing in the garage again, and Mom needs to run lines for whatever small-town production she's auditioning for next week. I don't bother responding. I just pull out my algebra homework and lose myself in problems that actually have solutions, unlike the problem of having parents who see their daughter as an inconvenience. The irony isn't lost on me that I have the highest grades in my class while living in a house where academic achievement is about as celebrated as a root canal. Last month, I won the school science fair with a project on renewable energy sources. You know what my parents said? That's nice, sweetheart. Now could you keep it down? We're trying to work on harmonies. But here's the thing about being 12 and essentially raising yourself, you get really good at reading people. And lately, I've been reading some pretty concerning signals. Hushed phone conversations that stop when I enter the room. Brochures for European music festivals scattered across Dad's desk. Mom practicing monologues with British accents. Something big is coming, and I have a sinking feeling that it doesn't include me in their grand plans. The bomb dropped on a Tuesday morning while I was eating cereal and reviewing my history notes. Dad walked into the kitchen with an expression I'd never seen before. Pure, unadulterated excitement mixed with something that looked suspiciously like guilt. Olivia, sweetheart, we need to talk, Mom said, sliding into the chair across from me. She was already dressed and made up, which was unusual for 7 a.m. Your father has incredible news. Dad's grin could have powered half the city. The label wants us to tour Europe. 6 months, maybe longer if things go well. This could be everything we've been working toward. I stopped chewing. Europe. 6 months. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. That's great, Dad, I said carefully, because I'd learned early that enthusiasm was expected even when my world was crumbling. When do you leave? That's the thing. Mom jumped in, her voice taking on that artificially bright tone she used when delivering bad news. I have audition opportunities there too. Theater companies, film work. It's a chance for both of us to really establish ourselves internationally. I nodded slowly, my spoon suspended over my cereal bowl. And me? The pause was everything I needed to know. They'd discussed this extensively, had probably stayed up late weighing their options, and somehow their 12-year-old daughter had ended up in the obstacles to overcome column rather than the family to protect one. Well, Dad cleared his throat. We think it would be best if you stayed with Uncle Richard for a while, just until we get settled and can figure out arrangements. Uncle Richard, Dad's older brother who lived in the nice part of town with his wife Sarah. I'd met them maybe 5 times in my entire life, usually at Christmas or 4th of July barbecues where they made polite conversation and gave me books for presents. How long is a while? I asked, though I was pretty sure I already knew. Mom reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Oh, honey, probably just a few months. If things don't work out over there, we'll be back before you know it. But she was already mentally packing, I could see it in her eyes. This wasn't a business trip or a short adventure. This was an escape plan that had been months in the making, and I was the anchor they were finally cutting loose. Uncle Richard already said yes? We spoke with him last night, Dad admitted. He and Sarah are excited to have you. They've always wanted kids, you know. Right. Because I was so forgettable that they'd discussed my entire future without including me in the conversation. I was 12, not 2. I had opinions, feelings, a whole life they were disrupting. But apparently, none of that mattered when weighed against their artistic aspirations. "I'll need to pack," I said quietly, standing up from the table. "Oh, sweetheart." Mom's voice was soft with what she probably thought was compassion. "We've already started gathering your things. We know this is hard, but think of it as an adventure. An adventure." That's what they were calling the systematic dismantling of the only life I'd ever known. Uncle Richard's house looks like something from a magazine, all clean lines and perfectly manicured lawns. Sarah opens the door with a smile so warm I almost forget that I'm here because my parents essentially donated me to charity. "Olivia, we're so excited to have you," she says. And the crazy thing is, she actually sounds like she means it. "Come on, let me show you your room. Your room. Not the guest room, not where you'll be sleeping temporarily. Your room." It's a small distinction, but after being treated like a house guest in my own home for years, it hits differently. The room is painted a soft lavender color. Not my favorite, but infinitely better than the beige walls I'd stared at for the past 12 years. There's a desk by the window, empty bookshelves waiting to be filled, and a bed with a comforter that looks like it was actually chosen for a 12-year-old girl rather than grabbed from whatever clearance rack was convenient. "We weren't sure what colors you liked," Sarah says, wringing her hands nervously. "But we can repaint if you want something different, and we can go shopping for decorations this weekend if you'd like." I set my suitcase on the bed and look around. In my old house, asking to repaint my room would have been met with lectures about money and practicality. Here, it's being offered as a given. "This is perfect," I tell her honestly. "Thank you." The first few weeks are an adjustment period that feels like learning to live in an entirely different world. Uncle Richard and Sarah eat dinner together every night at 6 p.m. sharp. They ask about my day and actually listen to the answers. When I mention a difficult math concept, Richard spends an hour helping me work through practice problems. When Sarah finds out I like to read, she takes me to the bookstore and tells me to pick out whatever I want. But I still miss my parents, even though I probably shouldn't. Even though they've called exactly twice in 3 weeks, and both conversations lasted less than 5 minutes. "How are you settling in, sweetheart?" Mom asks during the second call, and I can hear music and laughter in the background. "Fine," I tell her. "Uncle Richard and Sarah are really nice. I like my new school." "That's wonderful. I'm so glad you're happy. Listen, we're in London right now, and things are going better than expected. Dad's band has been invited to record some demo tracks, and I have a callback for a period drama series." "That's great, Mom. When do you think you'll be back?" A pause. "Well, that's hard to say right now. These opportunities don't come along very often, you know? But we miss you terribly." "Do you, though?" I want to ask. "Because if you missed me terribly, wouldn't you want to come home? Wouldn't you have called more than twice in almost a month?" "I miss you too," I say instead, because it's what she wants to hear. "Good. Now, be good for your uncle and aunt, okay? We'll talk soon." Soon turns out to be another 2 weeks. The calls become sporadic, always brief, always filled with exciting updates about their European adventure and vague promises about future plans. I start to understand that I'm not temporarily inconvenienced by their absence. I'm permanently replaced by their new life. Spring arrives with an unexpected promise that changes everything. Mom calls on a Saturday morning, and for the first time in months, she sounds like the mother I remember from when I was younger. "Sweetheart, I have the most wonderful news," she says, her voice bubbling with excitement. "We're going to be back for your 13th birthday. I wouldn't miss it for the world." My heart does this ridiculous little leap, the kind that makes you realize you've been holding your breath for months without knowing it. "Really? You're coming home?" "Of course. My baby is turning 13. That's a big milestone. We'll celebrate properly. Just you wait." For the first time since moving in with Uncle Richard and Sarah, I feel like maybe this whole situation isn't permanent. Maybe my parents do miss me. Maybe they've realized that their careers aren't worth losing their daughter. "When?" I ask, already mentally counting down the days. My birthday is still 4 months away, but suddenly I can picture it perfectly. Mom making my favorite chocolate cake, Dad playing guitar while we sing, the 3 of us together again like a real family. April 15th, just like we planned. I've already marked it on the calendar. I hang up the phone with more hope than I've felt since this whole nightmare began. Sarah finds me in my room later that afternoon, staring at my wall calendar with a big red circle around April 15th. "Your parents called?" she asks gently. "They're coming back for my birthday," I tell her, unable to keep the excitement out of my voice. "Mom promised." Sarah's expression is carefully neutral. "That's wonderful, honey. How would you like to celebrate?" For the first time since moving here, I let myself dream big. Could we have a party? With friends from school? I've never had a real birthday party before. "Of course," Sarah says immediately. "We'll make it perfect. Garden party with decorations, games, whatever you want." The next 4 months pass in a blur of planning and anticipation. Sarah and I design invitations, plan a menu, and create decorations. I invite every friend I've made at my new school, all 8 of them, which feels like a massive improvement over the 0 friends I had at my old school where I was too busy studying to socialize. Richard helps me string lights in the garden and sets up a sound system for music. They're putting more effort into this party than my parents ever put into, well, anything involving me. 2 weeks before my birthday, I call Mom to confirm the plans. Mom, should I tell Uncle Richard and Sarah what time you'll be here? Sarah wants to time the cake for when you arrive. Another pause. Longer this time. Oh, sweetheart, about that. Things are a bit complicated right now. Dad's band has an opportunity to open for a major group, and the dates conflict with your birthday weekend. My stomach drops, but I force my voice to stay steady. So you'll come afterward? Well, we're trying to work something out. You understand how important this is for us, right? This could change everything. I understand that your daughter's 13th birthday matters less than opening for a band I've never heard of, I think, but don't say. Sure, Mom, I understand. You're such a mature girl, Olivia. We raised you right. No, I want to tell her. Uncle Richard and Sarah are raising me right. You abandoned me for your dreams and left other people to handle the messy parts of having a child. But I just say, thanks, Mom, because what else can I say? April 15th arrives with perfect weather, sunny but not too warm, with a gentle breeze that makes the garden decorations dance like they're celebrating too. By 2 p.m., all 8 of my friends have arrived, along with their parents who brought thoughtful gifts and genuine smiles. I keep checking my phone, waiting for the call or text that will tell me my parents have landed, that they're on their way, that they kept their promise. Sarah notices me glancing toward the driveway every few minutes and squeezes my shoulder gently. They'll be here, she says quietly, though I can see the doubt in her eyes. By 4 p.m., we've played all the games, eaten most of the food, and my friends are starting to ask when my parents will arrive. I make excuses. Traffic, delayed flights, work complications. The lies come easily now, probably because I've been telling them to myself all day. Should we wait to sing happy birthday? Asks Jessica, my closest friend from school. I look at the beautiful cake Sarah and I made together, 3 layers with strawberry frosting and 13 carefully placed candles. I think about all the birthdays before this one, where my parents barely remembered the date until the last minute, where celebration meant a grocery store cake and a hurried song between their rehearsals and meetings. No, I say firmly. Let's do it now. The song is loud and joyful and completely imperfect, and it's the best birthday singing I've ever heard. When I blow out the candles, I don't wish for my parents to show up. Instead, I wish for the strength to stop waiting for them. The party ends at 6 p.m. with hugs and promises to hang out soon. My friends' parents tell me what a lovely time they had, how mature and gracious I am, how lucky Uncle Richard and Sarah are to have me staying with them, not living with them, not being raised by them, just staying, because everyone still thinks this is temporary. At 8 p.m., I'm helping Sarah clean up the garden when my phone finally rings. Mom's name flashes on the screen, and for a split second, my heart leaps again. Maybe they're here. Maybe they'll still make it. Happy birthday, sweetheart. Mom's voice is distant, staticky. I'm so sorry we missed your party. The schedule got completely crazy and we couldn't get away. I sit down heavily on the garden bench, surrounded by deflated balloons and empty plates. It's okay, Mom. Tell me all about it. Did you have fun? Did Sarah take pictures? She wants me to make her feel better about missing my birthday. She wants me to absolve her of guilt by describing how wonderful it was without them. Yeah, it was great, I say flatly. Really great. I'm so glad. We'll make it up to you, I promise. Maybe Christmas, or your 14th birthday for sure. More promises, more maybes and probablys and we'll sees. I'm tired of living in the conditional tense of my parents' affection. Mom, I say quietly, how long has it been since you called? Oh, sweetheart, you know how busy we've been. Time just flies when you're working so hard. But we think about you every day. 6 weeks. It's been 6 weeks since the last call, and I only know because I've been keeping track in my journal like some pathetic accountant of parental neglect. I have to go, I tell her. Sarah made a special birthday dinner. Of course. Give our love to Richard and Sarah. They're doing such a wonderful job with you. They're not doing a job with me. They're being my family. There's a difference, though apparently my parents are too self-absorbed to understand it. After I hang up, I sit in the garden for a long time, watching the sunset behind Uncle Richard's carefully maintained rose bushes. Sarah comes out eventually and sits beside me, not saying anything, just being present in a way my parents never learned how to do. They're not coming back, I say finally. It's not a question. Sarah is quiet for a moment. I don't know, honey, but But I know that Richard and I love having you here for as long as you want to stay. For as long as you want to stay. Not until your parents get their act together. Not until this temporary arrangement ends. For as long as I want to stay. That night, I make a decision that will change everything. I stop checking my phone constantly. I stop making excuses for my parents to my friends. I stop planning my life around their promises. Most importantly, I stop calling them mom and dad. 2 years pass, and I haven't initiated a single phone call to my parents. It's liberating in a way I didn't expect, like finally setting down a weight I didn't realize I was carrying. They call occasionally, holidays mostly, and always with dramatic stories about near misses and almost breakthroughs that never quite materialize into actual success. I'm 15 now, and my life with Uncle Richard and Sarah has settled into something that feels remarkably like normalcy. I'm vice president of the student council, captain of the academic decathlon team, and I have a summer job teaching younger kids at the community center. None of these achievements happened by accident. They're the result of having adults in my life who actually pay attention to what I'm doing. But this stability is about to be tested in the worst possible way. Sarah has been tired lately, more tired than usual. She's been going to doctor appointments that she doesn't talk about much. And I catch her and Uncle Richard having hushed conversations that stop when I enter the room. The familiar dread settles in my stomach. I know what it looks like when adults are hiding something serious from me. The news comes on a Thursday evening in November. Sarah calls me into the living room where she and Uncle Richard are sitting together on the couch, holding hands. Her face is pale but determined, and I know before she says anything that our carefully constructed world is about to change. "Sweetie, I need to tell you something," she begins, her voice steadier than I expected. "The doctors found something, cancer, but it's treatable, and I have an excellent medical team and we're going to fight this thing. Cancer." The word lands like a physical blow, even though part of me had been preparing for it. Sarah, who taught me how to bake cookies and listen to my friend drama and helped me with my college application essays, has cancer. "What kind?" I ask, because that's what you're supposed to ask, even though I don't really want to know the answer. "Ovarian, stage 3. The treatment will be aggressive, but my doctors are optimistic." Stage 3. Aggressive treatment. Optimistic. Medical euphemisms that don't quite hide the severity of what we're facing. Over the following months, I watched the strongest woman I know transform into someone I barely recognize. The chemotherapy steals her hair, her energy, her easy laughter. But it doesn't touch her spirit somehow. Even when she's too weak to get out of bed, she's asking about my grades, my college plans, my social life. I become her primary caregiver when Uncle Richard is at work, learning to manage medications and doctor appointments and the 1,000 small indignities that come with serious illness. It's nothing like what I imagined 15 would look like, but somehow it doesn't feel like a burden. Taking care of Sarah feels like the most important thing I've ever done. She dies on a Tuesday morning in March, with Uncle Richard holding one hand and me holding the other. Her last words are about how proud she is of the young woman I've become, and how much she loves both of us. The funeral is larger than I expected. Sarah had friends from her book club, her volunteer work, her yoga classes, people whose lives she touched in ways I'm only now learning about. My parents don't come. They send flowers and a card that says they're thinking of us during this difficult time, as if we're distant acquaintances rather than family. In the weeks after Sarah's death, Uncle Richard and I navigate grief together in a way that feels both devastatingly sad and surprisingly intimate. We eat dinner together in silence sometimes, both lost in memories. He teaches me about managing household finances and investment portfolios, not because he's trying to burden me with adult responsibilities, but because he wants me to be prepared for life in a way he never was at my age. "Your parents," he says one evening while we're organizing Sarah's books to donate to the library, "they love you in their own way. But love isn't enough if it doesn't come with commitment." It's the closest thing to criticism of his brother that I've ever heard from him, and it means everything. "You and Sarah committed to me," I tell him, "even when you didn't have to." "We didn't have to," he agrees. "We wanted to." That's what family means, Olivia. Wanting to, not having to. I think about this conversation for months afterward, because it crystallizes something I've been feeling but couldn't articulate. My biological parents gave me life, but Uncle Richard and Sarah gave me family. There's a profound difference between the two, and I'm only just beginning to understand how rare and precious the latter really is. Life after Sarah's death settles into a new rhythm, one that revolves around Uncle Richard and me figuring out how to be a family of two. He throws himself into teaching me everything Sarah would have wanted me to know, and plenty she probably wouldn't have thought to include. "Money," he says one Saturday morning over coffee, spreading financial documents across the dining room table, "is not about having it. It's about understanding it." I'm 16 now, and while my friends are worried about prom dates and college applications, I'm learning about compound interest, investment portfolios, and the difference between assets and liabilities. Some people might call this an unusual way to spend weekends, but honestly, after years of watching my parents make every decision based on whatever sounded most exciting in the moment, there's something deeply comforting about understanding how financial security actually works. Your parents, Uncle Richard says carefully, because he's always careful when he mentions them. They see money as something that comes and goes, like weather, but wealth is built slowly, deliberately, over time. He shows me his investment accounts, explains how he turned a modest salary into something substantial through patience and smart choices. More importantly, he explains why this matters, not for luxury or status, but for freedom. Freedom from desperation, freedom from making choices based on panic rather than principles. What do you think will happen next? Drop your predictions in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're learning something new about family and money today. The most valuable thing I can teach you, he continues, isn't about money at all. It's about loyalty. Real loyalty, not the fake kind people talk about. He tells me about my grandparents, his and my father's parents, who live about an hour away in a retirement community. I've met them exactly 3 times in my entire life, always at Uncle Richard's insistence and always over my father's objections. Your dad doesn't visit them much, Uncle Richard says diplomatically. He says they're too critical, too old-fashioned, but the truth is they remind him of responsibilities he'd rather ignore. The next weekend, we drive out to see them. Grandma Helen and Grandpa Frank live in a small but immaculate apartment filled with photos, mostly of Uncle Richard at various life milestones, with a few awkward family shots that include my father. I notice immediately that there are no recent photos of my parents, and certainly none of me. Olivia! Grandma Helen pulls me into a hug that smells like vanilla and old-fashioned perfume. Look how you've grown. Richard sends us pictures, but seeing you in person, you're so beautiful, sweetheart. Richard sends them pictures? I glance at my uncle, who shrugs modestly. Apparently, he's been keeping my grandparents updated on my life while my actual parents couldn't be bothered to maintain any connection at all. Your uncle tells us you're doing wonderfully in school, Grandpa Frank says, settling into his recliner. Academic decathlon captain, is that right? They know about academic decathlon. They know about my grades, my summer job, probably my college plans too. These people I barely know have been following my life more closely than my own parents. Richard also mentioned you've been taking care of him since Sarah passed, Grandma Helen says, her voice gentle. That shows real character, honey. Real family values. Family values. There's that phrase again. But coming from her, it doesn't sound like empty rhetoric. It sounds like something earned through action rather than promised through words. We spend the afternoon looking at photo albums and listening to stories about my father's childhood, stories that reveal a pattern of selfishness and irresponsibility that apparently goes back decades. Uncle Richard was always the responsible one, the one who called on birthdays and showed up for holidays, while my father was always chasing some dream that was just out of reach. We haven't heard from your parents in almost 2 years, Grandpa Frank admits quietly when Uncle Richard steps outside to take a phone call. We send Christmas cards to whatever address Richard gives us, but they never respond. 2 years. My grandparents have been functionally abandoned by their son, just like I was. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, apparently. I'm sorry, I tell them, though I'm not sure why I'm apologizing for my parents' behavior. Don't you apologize for them, Grandma Helen says firmly. You're not responsible for their choices, but we want you to know, you're always welcome here. You're our granddaughter, and that means something to us even if it doesn't mean much to your father. On the drive home, Uncle Richard is quieter than usual. Finally, he speaks. They've been asking about you for years. I've been sending them school photos and report cards because I knew your parents wouldn't. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to meet them when you were ready, not because you felt obligated. There's a difference between family that demands your attention and family that earns it. Senior year brings college acceptance letters and a decision that surprises everyone, including myself. I get into several prestigious universities, but I choose the state school an hour away from Uncle Richard. Close enough to visit regularly, far enough to establish independence. Are you sure? He asks when I tell him my decision. You could go anywhere, Olivia. Harvard accepted you. So did Stanford. I'm sure, I tell him. Besides, someone needs to keep an eye on you. Make sure you're eating vegetables and not just surviving on takeout Chinese food. The truth is more complicated. After losing Sarah, the thought of being thousands of miles away from the only real family I have left feels impossible. Uncle Richard pretends it's about convenience or cost, but I can see the relief in his eyes. College is everything I hoped it would be. intellectually challenging, socially fulfilling, and blissfully free from family drama. I major in business with a minor in psychology, partially because I'm genuinely interested in both subjects, and partially because understanding money and people seems like a practical combination for navigating life. I visit Uncle Richard every few weeks, and our relationship deepens in ways I didn't expect. He's not trying to be my father, that ship sailed years ago, but he's something better. He's my mentor, my safety net, and my biggest supporter all rolled into one. You know, he says during one of our Saturday morning financial lessons, which have continued even through college, I never thought I'd be good at this whole parental thing. Sarah was always the one who was natural with kids. You're not my parent, I tell him gently. You're my uncle. And you're the best uncle anyone could ask for. It's true. Uncle Richard never tried to replace my parents or make me forget them. He just consistently showed up, day after day, year after year, until showing up became a foundation I could build my entire life on. My parents, meanwhile, have become characters in a story I occasionally hear secondhand. Dad's band had some minor success in Europe. They opened for a few bigger acts and recorded an album that sold modestly. Mom landed some small roles in independent films that premiered at festivals no one has heard of. They're living their dream, apparently, though it's a dream that never included space for their daughter. They call on my birthday and Christmas, conversations that have become increasingly strained and superficial over the years. We talk about the weather, my grades, their latest projects. We don't talk about why they never visit, why they missed my high school graduation, why every major milestone of my life has been celebrated without them. How's college? Mom asks during my junior year Christmas call. Good. I'm thinking about graduate school. That's wonderful. You were always so smart. You get that from me, you know. Do I want to ask? Because the intelligence I'm most proud of is the kind that Uncle Richard taught me. Emotional intelligence, financial literacy, the wisdom to distinguish between what people say and what they do. Uncle Richard has been helping me research programs. I tell her instead. A pause. That's nice. How is Richard? We should really call him more often. Should. Another word that means nothing coming from her. She should call him more often, just like she should have been present for my childhood. Just like she should have prioritized her daughter over her career at least occasionally. He's good, I say. Healthy. Happy. Good. Well, your father sends his love. He's in the studio today working on some new material. Of course he is. Dad is always in the studio, or on stage, or in meetings, or anywhere that isn't here having this conversation with his daughter. After I hang up, I sit in my dorm room feeling oddly empty. These calls used to devastate me, but now they just feel like obligations we're all going through the motions to fulfill. My parents check stayed in touch with daughter off their list, and I check maintained relationship with parents off mine, and we all pretend it means something. But it doesn't. Not anymore. I graduate summa cum laude with a degree in business and immediately land a position at a consulting firm in the city. The work is challenging and well paid, and I'm good at it in a way that feels both natural and earned. My colleagues respect my analytical skills and work ethic. My boss hints at fast-track promotion opportunities, and for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm building something that's entirely my own. Uncle Richard is incredibly proud, though he tries to hide it behind practical concerns about my apartment lease and health insurance benefits. We have dinner every Sunday, a tradition that started in college and continues now that I'm living independently. These dinners are the highlight of my week. Not because my life is lacking, but because spending time with Uncle Richard feels like coming home. You know, he says over dessert one Sunday when I'm 25, I've been thinking about updating my will. I nearly choke on my coffee. Uncle Richard, you're not even 60. Why are you thinking about wills? Because smart people plan ahead. And because I want to make sure everything I've worked for goes to the right places when the time comes. He's always been practical about mortality, a trait Sarah's death reinforced rather than created. He has excellent health insurance, a comprehensive estate plan, and the kind of methodical approach to life planning that comes from understanding that tomorrow isn't guaranteed. I don't want to talk about this, I tell him honestly. I know, but we need to. You're the most important person in my life, Olivia. You're the daughter Sarah and I never had, and you're the only family member who's ever consistently been present and reliable. I want you to understand what that means to me. Over the following months, he involves me in financial planning conversations that feel both overwhelming and necessary. He explains his investment strategy, his philanthropic goals, his hopes for how his wealth might be used after he's gone. Most importantly, he explains his reasoning. Your parents made their choice years ago, he says bluntly. They chose their careers over their responsibilities. I respect their right to make that choice, but I don't have to reward it. What about your parents, Grandma and Grandpa? They're financially secure. I've already set aside provisions for their care for as long as they need it. But the bulk of everything, the house, the investments, the business interests, that's for you. Uncle Richard, you earned it, Olivia. Not through blood relation, but through showing up, through being family when family was needed, through becoming the kind of person who can be trusted with responsibility. I think about this conversation often over the next few years, as my career progresses, and my relationship with Uncle Richard continues to deepen. He's not just my guardian or benefactor, he's my role model for how to live with integrity. He shows me that wealth isn't about accumulation, but about stewardship. That family isn't about genetics, but about commitment. That love isn't about grand gestures, but about consistent presence. My parents become increasingly distant figures in my life. They call less frequently, our conversations grow shorter, and the gap between their world and mine becomes impossible to bridge. Dad's band achieves moderate success. They're not famous, but they're making a living touring smaller venues and selling albums to a dedicated fan base. Mom continues to work sporadically in independent films and regional theater. They're not unhappy, from what I can tell, but they're also not interested in any life that includes the complications of parenthood. Which is fine, honestly. I've built a life that doesn't require their approval or participation. I have meaningful work, close friendships, a romantic relationship with a wonderful man who understands that Uncle Richard is non-negotiable in my life. I'm successful, independent, and happy in ways that have nothing to do with them. But sometimes, late at night, I still wonder what it would have been like to have parents who fought to stay in my life, rather than fighting to escape it. The call comes at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday in November. I fumble for my phone, instantly awake because middle-of-the-night calls never bring good news. Olivia? The voice is unfamiliar. Professional, careful, sympathetic in the way that medical professionals are trained to be. This is Dr. Martinez from St. Mary's Hospital. You're listed as the emergency contact for Richard Harrison. Uncle Richard. My heart stops. What happened? Is he okay? I'm sorry, but Mr. Harrison suffered a massive heart attack at his home this evening. A neighbor heard his dog barking and called 911, but by the time paramedics arrived, I'm so sorry, he didn't survive. The words hit like physical blows. Massive heart attack. Didn't survive. Uncle Richard is gone. Are you sure? I ask stupidly, as if there might be some mistake, some mix-up with patient records that could bring him back. I'm certain. I'm very sorry for your loss. We'll need you to come in when you're ready to discuss arrangements and collect his personal effects. I hang up the phone and sit in my dark apartment, trying to process information that feels impossible to absorb. Uncle Richard was healthy. He exercised regularly, ate well, had regular checkups. He was supposed to be around for decades more, walking me down the aisle at my wedding, teaching my children about compound interest and family loyalty, growing old gracefully in the house he shared with Sarah. Instead, he's gone at 58, and I'm alone in a way I haven't been since I was 12 years old. The next few days pass in a blur of funeral arrangements, legal paperwork, and the strange, surreal experience of dismantling a life that was so carefully constructed. Uncle Richard's lawyer, Mr. Thompson, handles most of the logistics with the kind of efficiency that suggests this isn't his first time shepherding someone through sudden grief. Your uncle was very thorough with his planning, Mr. Thompson tells me as we sit in his office reviewing documents. He updated everything regularly, and his instructions are extremely clear. The will reading is scheduled for next week, just immediate family and a few specific bequests. Who counts as immediate family? I ask, though I'm pretty sure I already know. You, obviously. Your grandparents. The household staff, Mrs. Garcia the housekeeper and Mr. Chen the groundskeeper. They each receive specific provisions. And your parents. My parents. Who haven't spoken to Uncle Richard in over a year. Who missed Sarah's funeral. Who have shown zero interest in our family for the better part of a decade. Will they actually come? The lawyer is required to notify all beneficiaries. Whether they attend is their choice. I spend the week before the will reading in Uncle Richard's house, going through his belongings and trying to decide what to keep, what to donate, what to store, until I'm emotionally ready to deal with it. The house feels enormous and empty without his presence, but it also feels like home in a way my childhood house never did. In his study, I find a folder labeled "For Olivia" in his careful handwriting. Inside are copies of every report card I ever earned, every school photo, every achievement award from elementary school through college. There are also printed emails he sent to my grandparents over the years, updating them on my progress and sharing photos of milestones my parents missed. At the very back of the folder is a handwritten letter addressed to me. My dear Olivia, it begins. If you're reading this, then I'm gone and you're probably feeling lost and alone. Please know that raising you, and yes, that's what we did, even if we never made it official, was the greatest privilege of my life. You took a broken situation and turned it into something beautiful. You loved Sarah through her illness with a maturity that humbled me. You brought joy and purpose to our lives when we thought we were too old to start over with family. The letter continues for 3 pages, full of advice, expressions of love, and specific instructions about how he hopes his legacy will be used. But the part that stays with me is simpler. You are not alone, and you never will be as long as you remember what real family means. The funeral is held on a gray December morning that feels appropriate for saying goodbye to the best man I've ever known. The church is packed. Uncle Richard had more friends and colleagues than I realized, people whose lives he touched through his quiet generosity and steady presence. My grandparents are there, looking frail but determined. Mrs. Garcia and Mr. Chen sit in the front row with me, tears streaming down their faces. My parents don't come. I'm not surprised, but I'm disappointed in a way that surprises me. Even now, even after everything, part of me hoped they might show up to honor the man who raised their abandoned daughter. But they don't. And for the first time, their absence feels like a gift, rather than a wound. I don't have to manage their drama or their guilt or their attempts to make this moment about them. I can just grieve for Uncle Richard surrounded by people who actually loved him. The will reading is scheduled for the following Monday at Mr. Thompson's office. I arrive early, dressed in the black suit Uncle Richard bought me for job interviews, feeling nervous in a way that surprises me. I know I'm in the will. Uncle Richard and I discussed it extensively. But there's something formal and final about this process that makes everything feel real in a new way. Mrs. Garcia and Mr. Chen are already there when I arrive, both looking uncomfortable in their formal clothes but touched to be included. My grandparents arrive a few minutes later, moving slowly but determinedly. Grandma Helen squeezes my hand as she sits down beside me. "He loved you so much, sweetheart," she whispers. "More than you probably know." Mr. Thompson arranges papers on his desk and checks his watch. "We're still waiting for one more beneficiary," he says diplomatically. My heart sinks as I realize who he means. Somehow, despite everything, my parents are actually coming to this. After skipping the funeral, after years of silence, they're going to show up for the money distribution. The irony is so bitter I can almost taste it. Sure enough, at exactly 2 p.m., the door opens and my parents walk in. I haven't seen them in person in over 3 years, and the shock of their physical presence hits me harder than I expected. Mom looks older, thinner, with the kind of artificial enhancement that suggests she's still chasing roles meant for younger women. Dad has gone gray and soft around the middle, and his clothes are expensive in a way that screams, trying too hard. They don't look at me when they enter. Mom nods briefly to my grandparents and takes a seat on the opposite side of the room. Dad stares straight ahead, jaw set in the stubborn expression I remember from childhood, whenever he was forced to deal with family obligations. The awkwardness in the room is suffocating. These people who share my DNA are virtual strangers, and their presence at Uncle Richard's will reading feels like a violation of something sacred. Mr. Thompson clears his throat and begins reading. The bequests are exactly what Uncle Richard and I discussed. Mrs. Garcia receives the guest house on the property, plus a substantial cash settlement, enough to retire comfortably. Mr. Chen gets the garden cottage and his own financial provision. My grandparents receive enhanced trust funds to ensure their care for life. To my beloved niece Olivia, Mr. Thompson continues, who became the daughter I never had and the finest person I've ever known, I leave the remainder of my estate. This includes the family home, all investment accounts, the art collection, vintage car collection, and all other assets not otherwise specified. The total value of this bequest is approximately $12 million. $12 million. Even knowing it was coming, hearing the number spoken aloud takes my breath away. I'm 27 years old, and Uncle Richard has just made me financially independent for life. But before I can fully process this information, my mother stands up abruptly. "I'm sorry," she says, her voice sharp and incredulous. "But this can't be right. Richard was my husband's brother. I'm family too. Where's my inheritance?" The entitlement in her voice is staggering. She abandoned her own daughter, ignored her brother-in-law for years, skipped his funeral, and now she's demanding money? Mr. Thompson consults his papers calmly. "Mrs. Harrison, you and your husband are not named as beneficiaries in this will." "That's impossible," Dad says, speaking for the first time. "We're his only family besides Olivia. There must be some mistake." "There's no mistake," Mr. Thompson replies. Mr. Harrison was very specific about his intentions. He left detailed instructions explaining his decisions. Mom's face flushes red. "This is ridiculous. I demand at least half of whatever she's getting," she says, pointing at me like I'm a stranger rather than her daughter. "We're his brother and sister-in-law. We have legal rights." Legal rights. After 15 years of abandonment and neglect, she thinks she has legal rights to Uncle Richard's money. I stand up slowly, feeling calmer than I have any right to feel. This is the moment I've been unconsciously preparing for my entire adult life. Actually, Mom, I say, and my voice comes out steady and clear. You don't have any legal rights to Uncle Richard's estate. But please go ahead and explain to everyone here why you think you deserve half of his money. She looks startled that I'm speaking directly to her, like she expected me to sit quietly while she demanded my inheritance. I'm family, Olivia. Blood family. That has to count for something. You're right. It does count for something. Let me tell you exactly what it counted for Uncle Richard. I turn to address the room, including my grandparents who are watching this scene with undisguised disgust. For those of you who don't know the full story, my parents dumped me on Uncle Richard's doorstep when I was 12 years old because I was interfering with their marriage and their artistic careers in Europe. Mom's face goes pale. That's not how it happened. We were going through a difficult time. You left me with people you barely knew, I continue, for what you said would be a few months. That was 15 years ago. In that time, you missed my 13th birthday after promising you'd be there. You missed my high school graduation. You missed Sarah's funeral. You missed Uncle Richard's funeral. But you sure didn't miss this will reading, did you? The silence in the room is deafening. Mrs. Garcia is staring at my parents with open horror. My grandparents look like they want to disappear into their chairs from secondhand embarrassment. We were building our careers, Dad says weakly. We thought Richard and Sarah could provide stability. They could, and they did. They gave me everything you never bothered to. Love, attention, guidance, and yes, financial security. Uncle Richard taught me about money, about family, about what real commitment looks like. Do you want to know what else he taught me? I walk over to Mr. Thompson's desk and pick up a folder I brought with me. He taught me to keep records. So I have documentation of every phone call, every missed birthday, every broken promise. I have a timeline of your complete abandonment of your parental responsibilities. I open the folder and pull out a printed spreadsheet. In the 15 years since you left me here, you called me an average of 3.2 times per year. The longest conversation we had was 12 minutes. The shortest was 45 seconds. That was the call when you wished me happy birthday 2 weeks late because you forgot the actual date. Mom is crying now, but they're angry tears, not remorseful ones. You can't just punish us forever for trying to build a life. I'm not punishing you, I interrupt. I'm simply not rewarding you. There's a difference. I turn back to face the room. Uncle Richard spent his money on my education, my health care, my emotional well-being. He invested in me when you walked away. He earned the right to decide where his assets go, and he chose to leave them to someone who actually functioned as family. But you're getting $12 million, Mom shouts. Surely you can spare some for the people who gave you life. And there it is. The entitlement laid bare. She wants credit for giving birth to me while taking no responsibility for raising me. I look at her for a long moment. This woman who shares my DNA but nothing else meaningful. You know what's funny? Uncle Richard actually did leave you something. Mr. Thompson looks confused, shuffling through his papers. I don't see any provision for— Not in money, I clarify. He left you the knowledge that your daughter turned out to be a good person, despite your complete failure as parents. He left you the knowledge that other people stepped up to do the job you abandoned. And most importantly, he left you the knowledge that actions have consequences. I gather my papers and stand up. If you want to contest this will, you're welcome to try. But I think you'll find that 15 years of documented abandonment doesn't constitute grounds for inheritance claims. Mom is openly sobbing now. Olivia, please. We're your parents. We love you. No, I say simply. Uncle Richard loved me. Sarah loved me. You were simply people who happened to give birth to me and then decided parenting was too inconvenient for your lifestyle. I walk toward the door, then pause and turn back. Oh, and since you're so concerned about money, Uncle Richard also left detailed instructions about his charitable giving. Every year on my birthday, I'm instructed to donate a significant sum to organizations that support children in foster care and kinship arrangements. Children whose parents abandoned them, just like you abandoned me. The last thing I see before walking out is my mother's face, finally understanding that there will be no reconciliation, no financial windfall, no happy ending to the story of her terrible choices. Outside in the hallway, my grandparents catch up with me. Grandma Helen pulls me into a fierce hug. That was magnificent, sweetheart, she whispers. Richard would have been so proud. And you know what? I think he would have been. Not because I was cruel to my parents, but because I finally understood what he tried to teach me all those years. That family is about commitment, not genetics. That love is about presence, not promises. and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to enable people who've never learned the difference. If this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories about family, inheritance, and standing up for yourself when the people who should love you most try to take advantage of your success. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply living well despite everything they put you through.